From The National, this is Trending Middle East. It's Wednesday, May 21st. Here are today's headlines.
Prime Minister Netanyahu, end this blockade now and let the aid in.
The British government has sanctioned illegal Israeli settlers, halted trade negotiations with Israel, and summoned its ambassador. 7 entities in the West Bank were sanctioned, 3 people and 4 organizations, including farms. This after UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer joined the leaders of France and Canada to threaten sanctions against Israel in response to its conduct in Gaza. In an address to Parliament on Tuesday, Foreign Secretary David Lammy condemned Israel's renewed offensive in Gaza as, quote, morally wrong.
It's wholly disproportionate. It's utterly counterproductive. Whatever Israeli ministers claim, this is not the way to bring the hostages safely home.
The National's Thomas Harding reports.
Today's very strong announcement by the UK, sanctions of calling in the Israeli ambassador and ending talks on a free trade deal, demonstrate that patience is running out in the UK and the West with Israel's allies, who are utterly appalled by what is happening in Gaza. That impatience is now building across Europe and the West, and it is likely to result in further actions and words against Israel.
More than 53,000 Palestinians have been killed since the start of Israel's offensive in Gaza in response to Hamas attacks on southern Israel in October 2023. This is the strongest action from the British government to date.
There is now a growing impatience with Israel that is tangible following the scenes witnessed on people's television screens of the death and destruction that is being once again put upon the people of Gaza. This could well build up a significant head of steam in the coming days.
Israel escalated in its response. Chief of Staff Major General Eyal Zamir and Minister of Foreign Affairs Gideon Sa'ar said the statements from the UK, France, and Canada were casting doubt on the values of the army. Israel continues to reject appeals to allow in significant amounts of humanitarian aid. The UN, the US administration, Arab and EU countries, and key mediators have been calling for a ceasefire in the territory. Israel has responded with government statements announcing plans to intensify the military campaign and potentially seize more land. The European Union announced on Tuesday it would begin lifting sanctions on Syria. The EU's 27 foreign ministers agreed to lift sanctions at a meeting in Brussels. The National's Khaled Oweis reports from Amman.
The bloc had mostly imposed these sanctions in reaction to the 2011 crackdown on the peaceful protest movement that demanded the ouster of the regime of Bashar al-Assad. There is a new regime now, or a new government in Damascus, led by Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, a militant group that was formerly linked with Al-Qaeda and now is in charge of Syria, led by Ahmad al-Shara, a former jihadist. Nonetheless, a Western consensus has been building up of the need to help this new government and to avert a renewal of the civil war in Syria. This drive is largely influenced by Arab countries, particularly Saudi Arabia.
The exact terms of EU's lift were not immediately clear, but the EU has previously distinguished between sanctions on Syria's economy, many of which were suspended in February, and others on former Bashar al-Assad regime officials or those linked to drugs or chemical weapons. The decision came just a week after U.S. President Donald Trump announced that the U.S. would lift sanctions on Syria. Trump had indicated that he'd been asked to do so by Saudi Arabia and Turkey.
EU officials say, at least privately, that the move was not influenced by Trump as much as by the urgency of trying to help the country, which is under crushing economic conditions, with the government unable to pay salaries, plus other pressures on livelihood. One European official called the move to lift sanctions as a down payment with the government of Ahmed al-Sharia. By that, he means that the EU expects Ahmed al-Sharia to fulfill so far vague promises about moving the country from the stage of stabilization to pluralism and some sort of a democracy.
The United Nations leading humanitarian affairs official has warned that 14,000 babies in Gaza could die in the next 48 hours if aid doesn't reach them. That's after Israel allowed 5 aid lorries in on Monday. The UN's Undersecretary General for Humanitarian Affairs, Tom Fletcher, told the BBC, quote, "I want to save as many of these 14,000 babies as we can in the next 48 hours, unquote. That statement came on Tuesday. He said the 5 lorries of aid that had been allowed in are a, quote, drop in the ocean. Over the weekend, Israel launched a wave of air and ground operations in the enclave. The army had ordered residents to leave its second-largest city, Khan Yunis. Israel says it's pressuring Hamas to release the remaining hostages abducted in the October 7th, 2023 attack that ignited the war. Hamas has said it will only release them in exchange for a lasting ceasefire and an Israeli withdrawal. Meanwhile, a political row has erupted in Israel after left-wing member of parliament Yair Golan said his country was killing children in Gaza, quote, as a hobby.
אמרתי הבוקר שאנחנו מדינה שפויה שלא הורגת ילדים.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said those statements echoed, quote, anti-Semitic blood libel, unquote. That's all for this morning's headlines. You can get these stories and follow live updates at our site, Yasmin Al-Taji, The National.